Hey everybody, welcome to episode 8 of the Combat Chain podcast. I am your host, Adam Philipchuk, alongside Pat Shaw. And how's it going, Pat?
Adam, it is fantastic to be back. I'm doing well. Had a good long weekend behind me and ready to do some casting.
Nice. Yeah, this week on the podcast, we're going to be dipping into some speculations about the moving forward. But before we get into that, as always, Pat, how was your week in Fab?
Oh man, my week was an interesting one. I got a lot of games in, and if we're being frank, I didn't do well in a lot of them. I started out I did a commoner Blitz Armory on Thursday night, and I kept with Bravo, and it just wasn't doing what I wanted it to do, and I ended up going 1-3 in that, so kind of a feels bad for me. I have been kind of tracking my XP more and more, and going 1-3 was kind of a moment for me. I had a constructed match that was also in a month-long league. And I lost that one to a Lightning Briar, and I was running Bravo, and it was just I lost my discipline in the match, and it cost me in the long run. When I got to my turn where I thought I could pivot, I couldn't do enough, and they had sideboarded in Sigils of Suffering and had one in the arsenal ready for me to go, and I really needed them to take 2 cards out of their hand for me to feel good about it, and they blocked with equipment that they had late, and I did not. They blocked from a card with a card from hand and the defensive reaction from arsenal, and I had no cards left to stop the arcane, so it stopped my crush effect, and that was the game, and we still had like 4 more turns to go after that, so that wasn't great, but I did end up playing an event Sunday night with my Bravo. I've been playing Bravo this month to get back into the basics and get disciplined. So taking my licks earlier, I went 3-0 Sunday night. I beat Ice Lexi, and that felt good. It was close, and then they missed on a 3 of a kind late, and I responded with a dominated Spinal Crush to kill them, and that felt really good. I played against an Oldham, and I think they had tried to tech out against Bravo. They had put in, they were running Skullcap and Anothos instead of Crown of Seeds and Winter's Whale, which I thought was kind of odd, but I was able to block effectively, stay disciplined. I survived 2 Channel Lake Frigids, was able to leak damage and set up big turns late and overwhelm them. And then my round 3 match there was against an Azalea deck, and I was like, I was really checking my notes on that one. It's like, you're really running Azalea, but we were we were fighting for 3-0, so he was no slouch. I know the guy. He's been playing Azalea for as long as I've known him, and so he's one of those solid Azalea pilots. And I was able to fatigue him out. It ran late. He did a lot of neat tricks that I haven't seen a lot of heroes do that made me kind of give Azalea another look. Not that I'll build her ever, if we're being honest, but definitely a newfound respect for them. And then on Monday, you and I participated in the Fighters Guild Armory. We did not cross paths.
No, not this week.
But I made a very last second decision. I was getting new Briar set up, and I made the mistake of I assumed plunder runs were banned in Blitz, even though that we had broke the news last week that it was in Classic Constructed, but I was in replacing plunder run mode, and so I've been working on a Briar Shell, and I wanted to reduce that to a 40 card Blitz deck and tried to take out the plunder runs, and when I realized that the plunder runs were still in there, it screwed with the ratios, and I didn't feel good where it was at. So I happened to have a Prism Herald aggro deck sleeved up and ready to go that has been kind of collecting dust, so I busted that out. And I went 2-3 with Prism, no practice, in about 5 minutes before the event started. Beat out a Kano round 1. My son beat me round 2 because he woke up and I had to go tend to him, so I had to drop the second round match. And then lost handedly to an Ice Lexi, and closed it out with a there's another match in there, but I closed it out with a win against a Dorinthia, which felt pretty good. There's definitely some, having played it before. I mean, full disclosure, net decked the crap out of it. Did not like what I was doing in some situations. You can definitely tune it. And now that I'm not afraid to net deck when it comes to testing out a deck. I'll pick a popular thing. If I have the cards, I'll sleeve it up. And I trust someone's list whose name I can recognize with the deck and put that together to get a baseline of where that can go before I start tuning it myself. So I have some pretty good ideas where I could take that. I don't know if I will stick with Prism, but now that I've got it, sleeved up and I've played a couple games with it, I'll probably hold on to that and blitz for a little bit, see how it goes while I'm still, brainstorming my Briar, trying to make it work post-ban. But that is my week in Fab in a nutshell. How about yours?
My week was not bad. Some ups and downs like yours. Had a couple local events. Had a CC event on Wednesday last week, so the day after we recorded, went 2-1 in, managed to get one last hurrah in on my my hybrid Briar list.
You're the number one player in Canada. Everything that you do at this point is historic, so don't sell yourself short.
Fair enough. I was just thinking, I've been still playing when I've got nothing better to do, playing a ton of Arena, and Historic's one of the formats on there, so that's where my mind went there for some reason. Thursday was my night to bomb. Played in we did a Tails draft, and tried something different, tried to draft an Earth Briar, and I ended up... I didn't have as many Bramble Sparks as I would have liked, and then I put a lot of stake. Actually, there was a couple cards that stood out to me and that I'm actually messing around with in constructed formats. Explosive Growth being the main one, and then Stir the Wildwoods as well. But I ended up putting a little too much stake in Rites of Replenishment, drafted a whole bunch of those, and that one doesn't go the distance. On the surface, the idea of like tucking cards back into your deck and recycling cards, I thought that sounded really good, but then once you realize that it's not like an unconditional, if you deal arcane damage, its effect is active. It's when it's played. If you've dealt arcane damage that turn, you get the effect, and that makes it just a lot worse. Bramble Spark can't trigger it, and I just couldn't really muster up.
Interesting. Bramble Spark doesn't trigger it.
Yeah, just because
for some reason I thought it did.
No, just because I think because Rites of Replenishment specifically reads. Now I got to pull it up.
Right. Let's bring up the card.
Rites of So it reads, when you attack with Rites of Replenishment, if you've dealt arcane damage this turn, you may put a non-attack action card from your graveyard on the bottom of your deck. And I believe because of the key when you attack the card's checking to see at the time when the attack's declared if the arcane damage has happened, and Bramble Spark's dealing the arcane damage at that same time. And I believe the resolution of the arcane damage would come after when Rites of Replenishment is checking to see if that's if that arcane damage has occurred. I could very well be wrong. I'm not a judge, but
I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not a judge either. But I believe that if you control both triggers, you control the order in which they go.
Oh, that's a good point.
I think Rites is a little better than you let it be. I do think it works the way that you want it to. But, like I said, I'm not a judge.
You might be right.
All right, not to throw a monkey wrench in there, but I'm pretty sure it does work exactly like you want it to.
If you're right, then I still don't think it would have been enough to make the difference in the deck I was playing in that draft, because what I think I really needed at the time was like cards that pumped themselves. I needed more Stir the Wildwoods, and I needed more Explosive Growths, and I only had, I think, 1 Explosive Growth and like 2 Stir the Wildwoods, or maybe 3 Stir the Wildwoods. So but you could very well be right about the because if you're
on Judge Hub, there are a couple examples where that is the case. I have a Josh Scott out of New Zealand. When you attack, when you attack triggered ability is triggered by the attack event. In the example described, when you attack, if you have dealt arcane damage, will still trigger because at the time the attack event occurs, the trigger condition is not dependent on the arcane damage having been dealt. The turn player may order the arcane damage trigger from Bramblespark to resolve first, which means that when the Rites of Replenishment trigger resolves, it will then check the if condition, and you've successfully dealt damage from the Bramblespark trigger, you may put a non-attack action card from the graveyard on the bottom of your deck.
Okay. There we go. So I had it wrong. And that is good to know. I'm glad we cleared that up right here. I was actually just pulling up the release notes here to see if that touches on it as well. But
I do have some. I'm interested because I have never done a Tails draft. So how many people were in the pod? Was it a full 8-person pod in your draft?
We had 6 in ours.
What were you? You're a pretty experienced drafter, right?
So. I've got a few dozen Flesh and Blood drafts under my belt now, I'd say. I definitely wouldn't say I'm a seasoned drafter, but I've got some experience, I guess, reading signals at this point. I think I'm starting to be able to read my seat and be able to go ahead.
What was your well, I'm interested to dig in a little on the draft a little bit.
For sure.
I know we don't have to go into a full Tails primer here, but just this is a good thing to discuss. I'm interested in drafts. So where were you? What was your pack 1 pick 1?
Oh boy, that's a good question. You know what? I've actually got the deck still sitting on my desk here.
Let's take a look at it.
Let me see if I can. I've pulled out like 1 or 2 cards that I needed in a pinch, but I should be able to break down.
Let me ask you this while you're looking at it. What hero did you end up with?
I was on.
You ended up with a Briar, right?
Yeah, Earthbriar.
Were you were you sold on Earthbriar early? Did you find yourself like right in the middle of Earthbriar?
My pack 1 pick 1 was Sutcliffe Suede Hides.
Okay. Yep.
And I'm usually keen to pick equipment early. I don't like picking. I don't like picking a ton of equipment because then it cuts down on your playables. One big thing where like Flesh and Blood drafting is different than Magic is like Magic, you're drafting 45 cards that in theory can go in your deck. in Flesh and Blood, you're drafting both equipment and playables, so you have to be mindful of drafting enough playables to have cards to play in your deck. So I'm always, I used to experiment with taking more equipment and trying to get a full suite of equipment in limited, and I don't anymore. I try to pick powerhouses as I see them. Like Deep Blue is a huge
right, that's
pick.
That's a auto snap pick.
Oh yeah,
it,
easy.
Right? Yeah.
Easy. And I think, like, I mean, Sutcliffes, I think, are... Because those first 5 picks in the draft are kind of like your... If I get to play this card, I'm very happy. But if I have to cut this card, so be it. And I think Sutcliffes is a good enough a good enough effect that it's worth an early pick. To the contrary, though, like, I mean, if I'm absolutely sold on not wanting to play Briar, if I pass a Sutcliffe's pick one, that's going to send a pretty strong signal to whoever's sitting to my right, and that might push them into Briar, and then that leaves in pack 2 a little more open space for me to then maybe get either lightning cards for a Lexi deck, or lightning cards, or not lightning, earth cards for an Oldhim deck. So yeah, I mean, there's 2 ways of looking at that one. But that was my Sutcliffe's pack 1, pick 1.
How many? I suppose at the end of the draft, how many other Briars were there? Do you feel like your Briar pool was deep? Do you feel like it could have been better, but it was best available?
We had.
How did you feel the signals were as you were drafting?
I mean, I got pretty strong signals that there was no lightning right away, and I found out after the fact that I believe there was one other Briar who went hard lightning, and then there was, I think, if I remember correctly, actually I think it was a pretty even split. We had 2 Oldhims, 2 Briars, and 2 Lexis. And so, like, the lightning between the 2 Lexis and the other Briar, the lightning was gone right away, and I knew there was no lightning at the table. And so it was kind of between the early Sutcliffes and then seeing an abundance of Earth cards right away. That's where I was like, you know what, let's try out Earth Briar and let's see how that plays. Because I know, like, Bramble Spark fused into really anything is a pretty powerful combination on its own. And then if you can, like, Bramble Spark into Stir the Wildwoods, fuse both, like Stir the Wildwoods is getting +2, +4, if it's a red Bramble Spark, +7 right away. Even like a blue Stir the Wildwoods then comes in for 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like, that's
crazy numbers.
That's pretty good already. If you were able to get some tempo and double Bramble Spark into something, now you've got to go again. Like, I think I identified out of that a dream sequence of Bramble Spark, of course this is all fused, Bramble Spark, Explosive Growth into Sword.
Yep.
And
you get +1, +4 total.
+4 on the sword.
Attack. Yep.
So that's
pretty good numbers right there.
Now, that is all contingent on things hitting, which in limited Tales of Aria, there really
Arcane's automatic at that point, unless you have
you're Oldhim or you have Heart of Ice. Those are really the only ways to prevent arcane damage. So it's a super powerful combo in limited, in CC or in constructed formats. Still, I think, a decent combo for pushing damage. You're either going to, with the exception of a blue heavy deck, a Guardian probably, you're going to either push damage or you're going to pull some cards out of their hand regardless. And I think I'm happy with either. I think there's some debate. I had a conversation. There's some debate as to, like, what if it's like what the true return on value is. Maybe it's not as high as I'm thinking it is. It's certainly something I need to test out more to to really figure out like how happy I am with explosive growth. But on the surface, I think it's a killer card.
Yeah, I agree. I've been looking at explosive growth as well as a potential setup of Force of Nature. Yeah, I won't get into too much more.
Ooh, that might be good too.
Reveal all my spice, but it does buff attacks for the rest of the turn.
For the rest of the chain. On the chain.
Rest of the chain. Chain. Either way, it's long. It's more than just the next attack, so you have some potential with Force of Nature and buffed attacks at that point. But the stars have to still align enough to extend some attacks. You got to extend that combat chain.
Yeah.
But it is it does buff, +1 this combat chain. So you, like you said, with your fused Bramble Spark into explosive growth, all of a sudden you're looking at an extra, 2 to 3, depending on what leaks through for the rest of your attacks, and all of a sudden you got a Channel Mount Heroic, and it's a rare, and it costs 1 instead of 3, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good odds right there.
Yeah, and that's where I was like, even like to go back to like the double Bramble Spark into explosive growth into sword. That's technically a 2 resource turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Now you're
but
still.
I have sidetracked you way too much for your weekend Flesh and Blood.
Okay, I'll wrap it up quickly. So after the draft night, managed to redeem myself on a 3-0 on Prism CC. So that was cool. And then finished off the week with a 2-3 performance at the Fighters Guild on Kano. I'm trying out some slightly different things in Kano, so I got to learn the lines a little bit differently now. Just having recently gotten my hands on an eye, I'm now able to run Brendan Patrick's list, and I'm just curious to see what Brendan if anybody doesn't know, he did the 100 games of Kano to like truly like masterclass the hero. And yeah, I just kind of want to see what he's seeing, figure out why he's running the list the way he is. I have some cards that I actually prefer compared to some things he's running, and I have some other cards that like he's running that I'm like I actually really like. So I'm trying to maybe off of what he's got going on, then I'll settle on to what I like for my Kano build. And then earlier today, actually played in it's a European event.
The organized play.
That's the one. Yeah. Those guys.
It's at exactly the wrong time for me, or else I would have been in there as well.
Yeah, because you've got those doctor's office hours. You're on what, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 type deal.
Yep. I'm an office guy. So.
You know what though? It's nice to be, because I'm a shift worker, and it's nice to be able to pop into weekly events that like happen all over the world at different times. But on the flip side, you're able to with the inconsistencies in my schedule, you're able to at least like map out your week a little bit better. And there's after almost 10 years of shift work, there's something to be said about like the beauty of consistency. So
yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you there. And there is so there's a guy there's a content creator named Kugani Gaming.
Familiar with him?
He's assembled. Full disclosure, am a member of his subscriber of his Patreon. I love supporting other content creators. And one of his Patreon perks is a Google Calendar that lists all international armories and the dates and links and all that stuff. Definitely worth checking out for those who have the time.
I have heard of this calendar,
but it's all international events, and it's a must-have for the XP grinders, especially if you have a variable schedule. It's great to be able to look at that and pick out, oh yeah, there's a bunch that happen. For me, they would happen like smack dab in the middle of the day, what I can't pick up. But he's constantly updating that, and it's a good resource for those who want to get in those online armories and grind that XP.
Yeah, Kugani's been grinding the scene for a while. I think he's top. Where is he? He's actually got a pretty impressive. He's top 50 for sure.
He does a lot. He does a lot for the game, a lot of kind. And he called the bans pretty accurately.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. It was pretty. He's been talking about Plunder Run and Ball Lightning for a long time. He nailed. He was talking about that. He was talking specifically Ball Lightning. I told him he was crazy about Ball Lightning, but he was like, "No, it's a problem and it needs to get banned." And he was saying that at this point, it was almost like I feel like it was like 6 weeks ago, and it was like, "This needs to go." And then the bans came out, and I was like, "Wow, look at that!" It's almost like if you put your full time into it and do all the testing and assemble all the data, you might know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, cheers to him.
No, he's seeing something that even I wasn't seeing then, because like Plunder Run I knew as well, but Ball Lightning wasn't on my radar. So kudos to him. But yeah, that's Weeks in Flesh and Blood. Quickly here, Pat, why don't you rattle us through the news for the week?
The news. Let's do it. All right. First, we're going to talk about LSS announcing the ProQuest season. So it's been kind of the worst kept secret that ProQuest season is going to start. Stores have been listing their events. They've been getting ready to go, but I've talked to a number of LGSs that said they were prevented from actually like posting those events for registration till the official reveal on the 12th. Which ended up being the 13th in New Zealand time. But they have announced the 2022 inaugural season of in-store ProQuest events. To date, so I'm rattling this right off the website. So to date, the only way to play in ProQuest event has been to be part of the calling series in the national championships. With the start of the new year, however, we're launching ProQuest in local game stores worldwide, providing the community around the world with an opportunity to qualify for the Flesh and Blood Pro Tour series coming later this year. ProQuest events will be hosted at local game stores worldwide, running from February 19th to March 13th. This classic constructed event series is open to all players and will feature a number of prizes, with the winner claiming their invitation to the first Pro Tour, taking place in North America in the middle of this year. So that's a lot to unpack right there. It continues. It talks about the prizes. Prizes: 1 Pro Tour invite awarded to the winner of each event, or the losing finalist if the winner has already qualified via another in-store ProQuest event. 1 random drop gold cold foil awarded to the winner of each event. 2 ProQuest playmats awarded to the finalists at each event. And 7 random adult cold foil heroes awarded to the top 8 players, excluding the winner. Prizes will also be awarded to judges at these events, including extended art Rainbow Foil Wartune Herald Judge promos and 2 People's Champion playmats to be awarded at the tournament organizer's discretion. Over 250 ProQuest events will be taking place worldwide through the course of the season. A full list of all the events is available in our event finder or on the map below. It continues and talks about Battle Hardened. I think this is super interesting. With ProQuest moving to become an in-store program of play, we'll also be making some changes to our other event structures. Previously, Day 2 of the calling events had featured ProQuest events, but for 2022, these events are now going to be renamed as Battle Hardened events. Battle Hardened events in 2022 will be importantly different from in-store ProQuest events in that the prize pools are considerably larger than for in-store events, and winners receive a PTI that can be redeemed for entry into any future professional event that requires an invitation, such as your country's national championships, any future Pro Tour, or the World Championships. By contrast, in-store ProQuest winners receive invitations that are valid only for the upcoming Pro Tour, and the invitation will expire if it is not used for the specific Pro Tour that they are qualified for. We've got announcements coming up soon regarding upcoming battle-hardened events, which we'll be excited to share with you. So there's a lot going on right there. The big takeaways for me are that there's a Pro Tour event taking place in North America in the middle of this year, and it'll be the first Pro Tour event. If you win an event in this in-store ProQuest season, you're going to get your invite to that specific event. So I think that definitely weighs on people, I would say, outside of North America. There are a bunch happening all in Europe and in Asia, and if they're playing those ProQuest events, they're going to start weighing their travel considerations for that. And even, for me, I'm in the Northeast, depending on where that Pro Tour event takes place, in timing, I got to consider, how I'm getting there and when or if I'm getting there. So, these in-store PTIs are one of those ProQuest events, rather, are, you kind of weighing the invite to the next Pro Tour event or your gold foil card at that point, it seems.
Yeah.
And the battle harden, I think, is super intriguing, because if this is laid out the same way, if you go to a calling, and LSS has previously stated that they're going to have 30 plus callings in 2022. I haven't heard anything about them lately, but presumably every calling would have a battle harden like they've had a ProQuest in day 2. And if you win your battle harden event day 2, you might have just won your trip to the World Championship.
Yeah.
And that's pretty good incentive. If it's day 2, how many people are going to drop their calling, day 2 calling, if they're in, 63rd, riding the outskirts of day 2, mathematically eliminated from top 8, but still playing for prize money, something along those lines. I think if I were in that place, I definitely want to be playing for a world championship invite more than a, max top 16 or whatever the math ends up being for that.
Well, I believe.
What do you think?
I believe LSS has changed kind of how some of the ELO stuff is weighted to incentivize people to stick around in that day 2, even if they're mathematically eliminated from chance of making top 8. And
That's a very good point.
To actually be able to touch on this from experience, because I think making day 2, because remember at Vegas, the cut to day 2 was 64, but then the cut to cash out prizes was top 32 and above. And if you wanted a shot at that cash prize, even a smaller cash prize like the 250 or 500 US or whatever, you had to stick around and play. That was my experience in nationals as well. And so they've tucked in some little incentives to try to keep people to stick around and play those day 2 games. And I hope as time progresses, they change kind of some of the tiebreaker system to maybe make top 8 a little more achievable for anybody who's made day 2 to further incentivize people to stick around. And but for sure, there's with the battle hardens now on day 2 of any calling, there's certainly a lot of incentive to also try and play out in that field. And if you're not in a top position going into day 2 of a calling, yeah, why not just have a clean slate and try again?
Absolutely. Now, do you know how many ProQuests do you think you'll be playing this season?
I'm I'm actually, due to some changes in schedule, I'm actually possibly able to attend as many as 4. Because I've got a local one in my hometown here in Edmonton. I've got one just 3 hours south in Calgary, and then in Saskatchewan. So that's just one province over Saskatchewan. That's Estevan, Saskatchewan, which is pretty much on the American border. That's going to be about a 10-hour drive, but
Ooh,
I think
a lot.
I think
a lot of driving.
that one's worth it because I don't think anybody else is going to be bothered to make that drive. So that's kind of like, that one's like I'm kind of counting that one as my shoe-in, I guess. I don't know if it's okay to say that.
Ace in the hole.
Yeah.
The low attended in-store event.
But then
I like it.
There's also in beautiful, balmy
Guarantee
Winnipeg.
a cold foil.
There's one, and it was originally supposed to be the day after Calgary, but now Calgary changed their date for citing COVID reasons. They're pushing it back later in the month, or I think to early March. And so February 20th in Winnipeg is kind of like it's a wide open weekend. So I'm now that's kind of the schedule change is what's maybe allowing me to attend up to 4. So now it's just a matter of how much driving do I feel like doing, because Winnipeg I think is a 12-hour drive, something like that.
You love flesh and blood. I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, there's maybe it's not even a love, but just like an obsession. I don't know.
Feel that.
What about you?
4, but I have one weekend. I've got 2 in that weekend, one Saturday and one Sunday. I registered as soon as I could for the Saturday one. The Sunday one does not currently have a player cap. I've been in touch with the game store, and it doesn't seem like that'll be an issue. And as soon as they do, if it becomes an issue, I'm gonna register for that. But my life and time allow for just those, and I could it's either ignore my wife's birthday and play a couple and a couple more, or stay married and
live to see another day.
Yeah, live to see another day and play 2 in a weekend that is not already booked. So
2's still pretty good.
Two's good. I like the one weekend. It gives me like a very clear focal point when it comes to the play testing. I'm gonna have some time. So I have a date. I have like a peak date, right? So if you do any other kind of competing, if you ever done like racing or anything like that, you want to peak at the right time.
Yep.
So I've got I've got a timeline for this, for the play testing, for when I need to be really at the top of my game, so I can really hone in towards that goal. The times are pretty reasonable too. I think one of them is fires off at 11 a.m. my time, and the one the next day fires off at 1 p.m. The next day, so no crazy late nights, even if I manage to squeak one out or get into a top 8. And I'm going to be able to kind of take that information from the first day, and hopefully I'm not too mentally drained, and I can kind of leverage what I learned in day 1 into day 2 and see if I can turn it around. I'm being realistic with my aspirations, though. A Pro Tour invite is great, but I'm shooting for a cold foil.
Fair enough.
I need cold foil because a top 8'd, that's great. If I can get a PTI, it's gravy. So as we get closer, if I feel better, we'll see if I raise those goals a little bit. But that's my plan for the Pro Quest.
Hey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with having realistic goals as well. I think within anything, it's important to be to set reasonable expectations. I know I have not to cut you off. Oh, go ahead.
There is I got used to some high level playing online with everybody. It is a murderer's row in the Northeast. There are a few guys that are just killers. I got a big chunk of the hyperloopers around here.
Okay.
and a couple other guys. New Hampshire's got a small but very concentrated high level group. I've had to face them a few times in skirmish and such, and it's really tough. There's a couple guys from Western Massachusetts that are super high level, and like I said, some of the hyperloopers, they come up from New Jersey. Those that are coming from there, they come into Massachusetts to play some of the events, and some guys on the hyperloopers are from Mass. There's a chain player. He's one of the top chain players in the world. Joe Cologne.
Oh yeah, I've seen his name on the leaderboard.
Yeah. So he's around here, and just one of several names I'm looking out for. So I definitely have my work cut out for me, no matter what.
Yeah, and I mean,
but yeah, so
even here, it's for the most part, like I don't know of any strong player base, or I shouldn't say, I don't know of any player base in Saskatchewan or Manitoba for the most part. So that's kind of why I'm like, I don't know what to expect for those events. Maybe they could be, I don't like using the word soft field, but maybe they could be easier events. Like here, I expect, especially for the Calgary event, there's some strong guys in British Columbia that I expect to come down for Calgary and possibly Edmonton. That's those are going to be, I'm going to have my work cut out for me at those events as well. So, yeah. I think it's important to go into this ProQuest. I have set out this little personal goal to be on the first pro tour, but I think to your point, it is important to have like reasonable expectations and not try to bite off more than I can handle, I guess.
Yeah, completely. And it's still, I would say, especially when it comes to that kind of like, goal setting in a competitive environment is relative, right? If we compare and contrast ourselves, I would say that your pedigree is a bit higher than mine. So your goals would be proportionately higher than mine. And as we discussed last week in my introduction, I kind of I like to consider myself a bit of an up and coming player, but not to sell myself short, but progressive goals over time. I've done well in smaller events. This would be my first really larger scale event, and so setting those goals, I like to top aiding one of these is going to be super difficult, and being able to do that is a challenge into itself, and I think that'll getting there will definitely drive and motivate me to play my best. And I'd like to what I'm trying to say is that I have goals set for the ProQuest. ProQuest season is going to be my first large scale effort with a playtesting team, and I set my goals relative to I think my progress as we go. I do think that the ProQuest season is going to open up some opportunities in the calling season, which I believe will be coming up. COVID, allowing.
Yeah.
There's supposed to be, like I said, there's 30-ish calling events coming up in 2022 if they're happening. I'd like to think that a lot of those are drivable for me, and those would be fun to get into. Having watched watching the stream with Vegas and Dallas and Cincinnati was really fun and interesting. Getting into one of those, getting on camera, being on a featured table because I've done well into the competition. Something I'd like to achieve, things of that nature.
For sure.
But the ProQuest season is really kicking that off for me in 2022.
Yeah, no, it's I think ProQuest season is going to be a huge opportunity for a lot of people to kind of showcase and test their mettle and see exactly where they stand. I know, like, Vegas was my opportunity to kind of be like, okay, I know where I stand in comparison to a lot of other players, and kind of get an idea of just how good the community is. And I know I've since been able to step up my game, testing more and trying to just understand the game better than I did at the point then. So that's why I am as hopeful as I am for the ProQuest season. We went on another tangent there.
I'm sorry. I'm notorious for it. I'm going to be dragging you around all over the place.
You know what? I think it's fine. I think it makes for great conversation. But we had one more thing in the news. We had some Twitter, some interesting things on Twitter.
Yes. Well, before that, we're just going to touch base real quickly. February Armory kit.
Yes.
Comes out. Icelander is the cold foil hero. So I think two things. Icelander's the cold foil hero. When she was previewed as a majestic hero. I think if you start connecting the dots, I think Valda will be released as a majestic hero as well. And
I thought Valda was... I guess we never got Valda teased at her rarity. We only saw her as the cold foil.
No. Yeah, only as the promo, right? As the Armory top prize. So I would not be shocked, right? We're going to put our tinfoil hats on. I would not be shocked to see Valda as majestic, and this is likely a cycle of heroes at the majestic level. So if you count the number of majestics in Everfest, and we might dive into that in a later thing, but you might be able to set aside 9 of those maybe into heroes.
You think as many as 9?
That's very interesting, possibly.
Because for Crucible, we had 6 heroes that we got. And that's why my money was on 6 again.
What's the over-under then? You want to say
that's a good point.
7.5. I'll take the over on 7.5.
Sure.
So Icelander is the cold foil February Armory kit prize. Macho Grande featuring my picture is the rainbow foil extended art, and the Icelander playmat, which looks just amazing, is the playmat prize for the People's Champion. And there's a poster for the Armory event that has a jester. Looks a lot like a dressed up Dash. Seen some deep internet analysis on that.
Does it? I gotta go look at that now.
Yeah, right. Well, now you can't unsee it, right? That's only Dash now, but it does look a little like Dash. So curious if it is. But that is the February Armory kit from February 1st to February, let's see, 28th. Just making sure it's not a 29th. So those are your Armory kit rewards at your locals and online armories, and that is it for that's it for the Armory kit news. So the Flesh and Blood Twitter on the 16th started just unpinning grenades and throwing them out in the wild by posting some tweezers, posting some teaser tweets out from their Twitter handle at FabTCG. So we're gonna quickly run through these, and we'll kind of lightning round it. Let me know, Adam, the first thing that comes to mind when I say what they posted. All right, the first one, the earliest one. A card with a type that hasn't previously existed for its class.
Okay, I remember seeing this one. Immediately I thought somebody's getting something like an instant that they've never had before. So right off the bat, who's never had an instant? For some reason...
I had to do this thinking myself. I think... I don't think Warriors have it. I think Dorinthia hasn't had an instant. I don't think... Reiner's
got Arg Smash. I think that, and Bonehead Barrier are both instants.
Is it an instant, or I thought Bonehead was a defensive reaction?
Pretty sure.
All right.
I'm checking
Not
right now. Rhinar instant. Or sorry, Brute instant.
You're right.
Brute's got Bonehead Barrier. Okay.
I'm the most wrong. Okay.
Uh,
Guardian definitely does.
yeah, I feel like, does Mechanologist have an instant? Mechanologist doesn't have an instant.
Mech doesn't have an instant. Interesting. What about Katsu?
No, I don't think there is any for Ninja. No instants for Ninja.
That's tasty for me. I'm not gonna lie.
That could be really cool.
Ninja instant. All right, right. So that gets the brain brewing a little bit. All right, real quick. What do you got? What do you think it is? No thinking, off the top of your head.
For the card type.
Card type. Yep, card with the type that hasn't been, and the class. What class? What class? What type?
I for some reason my gut goes with Mech instant.
Mech instant. I'm gonna go with wizard attack.
Oh, that'd be interesting as well. That'd be really interesting.
All right, here we go. Next one. One new keyword that appears 4 times.
That could be anything. It's got to be something in relation to the carnival, though. Like it's going to be something like fanfare or exclamative joy, or I don't know, something where it's going to be like carnival-y, I think.
I'm going to be honest. If it is something like that, I think that'll be just terrible. I don't want.
Really?
I don't want to play with weirdly carnival themed cards for the rest of my life.
It won't be like
this game.
weird.
Something.
I don't think it'll be like super weird card, but it'll be like, because like so far we've seen things like Coax of Commotion, for example, is a card that like it's a trigger that like impacts everyone, and like this rounds on me as a trigger that impacts everyone, and I think like it's going to be a keyword that's going to be a trigger that impacts everyone, and it's like the name I think is going to be the keyword itself is going to be something I think like thematically themed around the carnival, but I don't think it's going to be like a cheesy carnival effect. I think it's just going to be like an effect that like mutually benefits everyone.
Yeah. All right. Next one, we have a way to destroy your own equipment and weapons.
This one, my question right away is, what benefit could there be to destroying your own equipment? Like, if you're losing something, what are you gaining?
A real good benefit.
Exactly.
Super good. That's super nice.
Like a win condition, or
it has to be, right? It's got to be a win con. It has to be a super powerful on-hit effect of some kind. What else could it do? It could draw you cards. I don't think Go Again is worth destroying your equipment, depending on what it is, because sometimes Go Again destroys your equipment anyways.
Yep.
But that is definitely interesting. My hot take on this is that you're going to have a new ninja, and it's going to throw stuff, and you're going to be able to destroy a token level thrown weapon to some sort of automatic, 1 damage, destroy throwing star, deal 1 damage. Ninja who throws throwing stars, puts throwing star in equipment slot when this condition is met.
Okay.
And you can have as many, 1 hit destroying throwing stars as you can handle during the game. You can load it up an unlimited amount of times.
Interesting.
Once per turn or something like that. But that's my spicy hot take for that. I think a ninja is going to have a thrown weapon that you can destroy to replicate its being thrown.
Okay, that could be really cool. My one caution right there is, though, I think of a ninja star or throwing star, and I think of that kind of the same way as like an arrow. And arrows right now are attack action, so I would see like thematically, and with what LSS has done traditionally, I would see like in particular like a throwing star as an attack action. But I definitely could see kind of what you're talking about with like some sort of one-time use weapon, or Well, I mean, we've even kind of seen that with Talishar already. Like, you can swing with it 3 times. It gets the 3 rust counters. Once you lose it, it's gone. To take weapon speculation even a step further, what do you think about a legendary weapon?
I think it's very interesting. I've heard about this. I will say that if there is a legendary weapon, I really hope it's not a Runeblade weapon. I don't think we can take that kind of insanity at this point. I wouldn't be shocked if there's been a lot of spec about like a Bard class.
I think Bard is going to be the legendary hero this
yeah,
set.
Right. If there's majestic level heroes, there's definitely going to be another legendary outside of Shiana.
Guaranteed.
And it might be the Bard in his, what do they call them? Loots?
Yep, a loot.
A Bard's loot. Legendary, I don't know what you would do with it. That's the one thing about the Bard class is I don't know what you would do with it. I know like in D&D settings, it does a lot of charming and seducing and things of that nature. I have a lot of trouble translating Bard into Flesh and Blood. That's been a big hiccup for me when it comes to embracing the idea of a Bard class. There are a lot of interesting classes that have not been explored yet. In the lore book, I wonder if I can bust out the symbols right now. But there is like, it mentions an assassin, a cleric,
necromancer, I think's in there.
Yeah, some other crazy stuff like that. Like I am all about a ninja assassin hero, or like a shadow assassin.
That'd be cool.
Crazy, so good. Just the idea of that is makes my mind blow. It's a great thing.
Do you think we see a new class in Everfest?
I mean, if we see Bard, I think that counts.
I guess, yeah.
It would be nice to see something like that. I would definitely like to see the introduction, or at least the real tangible hint of a new class, to show that they have those, that they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Right. And they like to throw in those kind of Easter eggs with some of their stuff anyways. The legendary weapon could also be stalagmite. Is that what it's called? Stalagmite, stalactite.
The bastion.
Bastion of the Oldham's shield. There that is mentioned in lore, but not. It is in fact not the ram's head.
Yeah, the one
Bastion of Eisenloft.
We see the picture of we see in his hero art.
Yeah, right. That shield, that would be interesting. Something along those lines. But I do think it'd be nice. I hope it doesn't break the game and want to drive like an insane price and all that stuff that makes things like that toxic. But
yeah,
it'll definitely be interesting to see.
What about the
destroying your own equipment is still kind of tough, right? You really gotta want it. But there's things in there like I always use Ninja for that kind of stuff, right? Ninja is terrible at blocking, and I hope, and we're about to explore a little in the next tweet here, but if I had the opportunity to destroy my breaking scales for something better, in effect better than breaking scales, probably do it. So if you had the right equipment, maybe incentivizes using a suite of common equipment instead of your legendaries, and you don't feel as bad breaking common equipment for a game-winning effect as you would trying to break your skull cap, things of that nature. So maybe they have something in there that incentivizes common equipment, which makes the game more accessible, etc., etc.
That'd be good.
So that's just my tinfoil there. Okay, next one. 4 equipment cards not previously printed in their class for these zones before.
4?
I want any ninja piece that blocks for 2, at least. That's all I want.
Oh, I guess we could get like a ninja chest piece or like
give me
illusionist headpiece.
Arms. Yeah.
God, there's so many potentials for that too.
Yeah.
Mech doesn't have
an
arm yet.
I want there to eventually be a mech suite of equipment where they run the equipment is like the weapon. I want the mechanologist to turn into Iron Man and have every piece of equipment be like 10 block and deals the damage from the equipment, and the dash hero only has like 10 life, but you got to break through all of equipment to get there, and it's just this massive walking mech armor.
Power suit mech is an archetype. Your entire deck is just devoted to just powering the suit, and the suit is what.
And now Voltron is possible in Flesh and Blood.
That'd be fun.
Take that right out of Commander. That's has nothing to do with this, but that's what I want out of equipment in this game. But 4 equipment cards not previously printed in their class for these zones before. I hope they all block. I think blocking is so important. I think we'll follow up a little more on that later, but blocking is such a critical part of the game, and I think especially right now, you're seeing the negative effects of not being able to block with equipment.
Well, so I think it's important for some equipment to not block as well. Like things like Snapdragon Scalers, a common equipment that gives you an automatic go again. There's a reason why that doesn't block. And like,
right.
So I think that's an interesting balancing piece too, as like,
yeah,
what blocks and what doesn't.
That's a good point. That's why I'm not the game designer. I'm just the hapless player.
I'm right there with you, though.
So what is the number one piece of equipment that is not there? Like what area and what class would you like to see?
I mean, I've been digging playing on Illusionist lately, so I would like to see either, because I mean, we've got like Footsteps is super powerful, and Vestige is really good for Prism. Halo, or I mean, I would like to see, and well, I guess Dreamweavers wouldn't be an alternative or an alternative to Dreamweavers wouldn't be a newly printed because Dreamweavers is already Illusionist. But like an M headpiece or an M arm piece, I guess in this case, like fitting with their tweet, it would have to be an M headpiece. I'm trying to think of what it would do. Like a reliable way to tuck a card into your soul would be nice. Maybe it doesn't have Spell Void or blocks or anything like that, but just like once per turn action, put a card into your soul.
Yep. I would like to see something like that as well. I would love to see a Shadow Brute equipment that helps banish cards.
Oh, that'd be good.
Without having to arbitrarily destroy the boots to... I think boots already exist for Shadow. I think whoever's a Shadow Beast is a Shadow Brute. But, breaking something that lets you, put the top... mill 3, right? So you can set up turns a little sooner than you might otherwise. An equipment that helps charge. Halo of Illumination with Bolton doesn't work. But something that maybe puts a card... specifically charges a card, anything like that, right? Take those heroes that need cards in different zones and enable them. Set it majestic level, give it temper, let it block 2, make you break it to do something fun that lets you build the deck around it a little bit, like Courage. Courage of Bladehold for me is like the perfect Flesh and Blood equipment. I love it.
Courage is a good one.
More of that. Majestic level does a thing that makes your deck really hum, doesn't break the game. All great things. All right, we have next up an attack that rewards the opponent for defending it.
This one
very interesting.
This one's going to be something like if you block this with 2 non-equipment cards, draw a card or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. I can definitely see something like that.
Or even,
I was thinking about it, right? They have draw a card on Coax a Commotion for everybody, but maybe like you would have to really. I
guess
I don't know.
It depends what they constitute as a reward. Because even if we look at something like Barraging Beatdown, where if you defend with 2 non-equipment cards, it doesn't get its buff. If that's considered to be a reward, then we might see like more mechanics like that, where it's even like, if this is defended by 2 non-equipment cards, the attack doesn't get its buff. Or if you defend this with your entire hand, you gain 1 intellect at the end of your turn. That'd be interesting.
That is a spicy one right there. Let's roll with that one. I like that one. All right. Next one up. An arrow attack card unlike any other.
So in one of the Discord feeds I hang out in, we were chatting about this, and somebody suggested an arrow you can pummel. So then somebody else suggested like a harpoon, and we started joking about like a Moby Dick.
Just different piercing utensils. You can throw
a ballista.
People. I like it.
I don't know. But the main idea was something you can pummel, which that'd be interesting.
Yep. 2-cost arrow with to be able to pummel it. Interesting. I don't know what that would be either. Ranger's a funny hero with me. Lexi is super dangerous. Azalea, not so much. I don't know what they can do. I hope they can do something with Azalea to bring her up a little bit. But that'll be interesting. Additional arrow attacks are always making Ranger better.
Yeah.
All right. And now for the big one. Okay. A generic card that can destroy cards in arsenals.
I'll tell you what this isn't. This is clearly not Command and Conquer. There's no way.
I will say for the sake of all of our sanity, I kind of want it to be. It would be really nice as one of those players who are like, I want more Command and Conquers, but the price is too high kind of guys. I would like it for my own selfish reasons so that I can get more of them.
I mean, you are probably
it's very
right.
Interesting.
Like I jest when I say that there's no way this is Command and Conquer. It's likely Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
But
it's very.
What if it isn't?
Right? Let's explore that. Right. So I'm hoping it is, but what if it isn't? My first question is it a really good idea to tweet this out the way they did? If it's not, could they really? I feel like it's a risk. You're really leading people on with this one, and if you take that away from them, I think there are going to be some sour grapes. For people expecting Command and Conquer. But, so maybe they're trying to move on from Command and Conquer. They still need some way to affect someone's arsenal.
What if they
maybe this is a twist. Maybe it's something.
Command and Conquer? What if it's like a 1-cost? Because traditionally we see like in red.
I don't want it.
1 for 0 for 4, 1 for 5, 2 for 6. Command and Conquer fit in with that 2 for 6 theme. What if we saw like a 1 for 5 themed Arsenal Destroyer, or 0 for 4 themed Arsenal Destroyer? Something that
0 cost 4 attack that destroys arsenals.
Oh, that'd be interesting. And then had some other thing instead of you can't de-react. Like instead you can't, I don't know.
With stuff. 0 cost 4 attack, on hit, destroy arsenal, and stuff.
Well,
that sounds like a legendary. You know what? If you're going to do something like that, I think you got to, at that point, make it legendary. Say you can't have more than one. Gorganian Toman right up.
Yeah. Okay,
and maybe they do something like that.
And I've always hated how they do this, where like they have like the legendary card type and then they have the legendary rarity, because I think that's super confusing. But what if on top of making it a legendary card type, something that powerful, like something that interacts with your opponent's arsenal at a 0 cost, was legendary rarity as well?
Yeah. That's if it's at the legendary rarity,
I'd almost hate to see it, because it's like a really supreme, like it's a very, very difficult card to obtain.
I think that's a dangerous game to play. I think they have it right with the equipment and the occasional hero. And that hero, I think, to make the game work and for people to want to play it and do things like that, I think they I don't think they can have a legendary rarity
For sure.
staple card. Then you start turning into Magic the Gathering a little bit, and we don't want that here. We want Flesh and Blood. We don't want Magic.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, what if it destroys your own arsenal?
But you get a bonus off of it for like destroy your arsenal.
They started
this
playing
attack
with that,
gets
right? So
plus
Crown of
3.
Seeds.
I don't know.
Crown of Seeds takes away your arsenal. Tome of Harvest takes away your arsenal.
Yep.
Crown of Seeds is maybe one of the I've heard some people say it's the best equipment in the game, and is the it is the thing that makes Oldham hum, and it creates untenable scenarios for your opponent and just does so much work. So they've started exploring that space of taking away your own arsenal for a benefit. Tome of Harvest. I think Tome of Harvest costs too much, but that's just me. But take away your arsenal, draw 3 is fantastic. That's I can definitely see a world where you're playing a card that says, as an additional cost, destroy the cards in your arsenal.
Yeah.
And maybe that becomes a Levia staple or something like that, right? Putting just a random 6 attack in there, and then you putting it in the bin easy, off an attack. It's a very interesting space there. So to sum it up, I think power creep on Command and Conquer, bad. Exploring design space for your own arsenal, good. And that's the news.
We did it. We got through the news.
This was an hour and a half later. We got through the first quarter of the podcast. We're gonna get there. We're gonna chop this right up. That's all right.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Now we're gonna move on to this week's main topic. Adam, why don't you tell us a little about our main topic here?
Yeah. Well, our main topic is a little bit of a continuation of just what's been kind of going on generally in the meta lately, and that is that we have a new meta.
When did that happen?
As of January 17th. Today is January 18th, so at the time of recording yesterday, we officially entered a new meta. As we touched on the show last week, Plunder Run is banned in Classic Constructed. Ball Lightning is banned in Classic Constructed and in Blitz. And on top of that, Briar has the functional errata. Briar can only perform or create an embodiment of Earth the first time an attack action deals damage. And that is an important distinction, not on hit when an attack action deals damage. So that includes like a Bramble Spark trigger or just like it did before. But just
right. Your first time creating an embodiment of Earth, that is it. You get that one and no more.
But
no more 7 block.
The other important distinction I think that's there too is that the errata specifies on the first trigger. So if you miss the first trigger on your turn, you've effectively missed your window to create your embodiment of Earth as well. So
complex game, and mistriggers
matter
more often than people. Yeah, they certainly do, and we've seen that play out in a grand scale in some of these games here.
For sure.
Over time. So we had mentioned in our week in Fab that we played in a Blitz Armory event with the bans in effect.
Yeah, and we kind of started to see a new meta emerge from that. I think you have the numbers for it, right?
I do. I'll have them in front of me. So let's. How many? What do you think is the most common hero that was played in Blitz? The first day of a ban being in effect here.
I mean, you would speculate.
Not to drag it out a little bit.
No, for sure.
What do you educated guess here? What do you think?
You would have thought that I think people would have still been wanting to like tinker with Briar and see if they can make Briar work, but I think Briar was one of the least represented heroes for the Blitz meta, right?
There was a single Briar played in that, and there was 34 participants, I believe we were at, maybe 35 total. But a single Briar, and they had made, I can tell you that Briar list was an Earth-based Briar.
Okay.
It had done really well, and they only had to take out 2 cards in their deck.
Interesting.
And replace them with one was an additional red Ravenous Rabble. They were playing 1 before then, and I forget what the other one was, to tell you the truth. But it was an inconsequential change to them. I had discussed a little with them after the fact, and they did. I believe they 3-2 but missed top cut. But that was a brutal. It was really hard to make top 8 last night. There was a lot of great players and 5 rounds. So bound to break some hearts cutting top 8 after 5 with 34-ish.
Yeah, and that's just bound to happen. Yeah.
But top of the numbers here were old mainstays Ira and Kano, both represented with 5.
Okay.
Next up was Dory and Oldham with 4.
Okay.
I apologize if that just came through. Let's try that again.
No, you're good.
I just got an email notification.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, in fact, it might have just been in my headphones. But anyways, let's see. Coming in second place for numbers was Dory and Oldham with 4 each.
Okay.
And then Chain and Bravo coming in 3 decks each on the night. Viserai, Lexi, and Prism both had 2. And Briar, Reinar, and, get ready, Benji each showed 1 deck apiece.
Hey, Benji, you like to see it.
Right? Love to see Benji show up every once in a while. Oldham is really... I think this is a pretty good representation of the top of the meta. Ira, so without the menace of Briar, you've seen some of the old mainstays in Ira and Kano, really, back to basics, so to speak, old familiar voices, going back, when someone hits the reset button, what do you know? Play what you know. It's kind of like how in I know I just said that this is Flesh and Blood and not Magic, but I know when Magic resets its meta, one of the first things that usually wins is a very simple red aggro deck.
Red deck wins.
Red deck. Yep, always. First 3 weeks in the season, always red deck wins shows up. Not that this is the same, but you get your tried and true. So Kano and Ira topping that list. Dory. Coming in with 4. Everyone knows Dory. Dory's a super dangerous puzzle to have to solve. I don't know if I like seeing Oldham being as represented as Dory, but I get it. And it's nice to see a new hero like that really show up and take hold, and still not completely break things, but it's definitely that Guardian build is one of the first true control decks, I think, out of Flesh and Blood. Really hard, fatigue control, drag you out and waste your time playing it, and it does. Oldham actually won the event last night.
Okay.
And so I think that's a very interesting sign here, at least in this kind of purgatory meta between bans and release of a new set here. But yeah, so what are your takeaways here when you see this list?
Kano doesn't surprise me. I've been comfortably playing Kano throughout this, on the Blitz side at least, throughout this previous meta, and Kano always has seemed to have his dominant place near the top of the Blitz meta, at least. I Ira, I'm actually really surprised to see Ira make a comeback. Briar did a really good job of shutting down Ira, and then on top of that, Oldhim. The Ira didn't have a good matchup into Oldhim either. So, I mean, Briar's out. I shouldn't say Briar's out. Briar's finding herself right now, and Oldhim.
And I can say that I was one of those. So I was running Briar all last season in skirmish, and I won my Fighters Guild with Briar, and going into last night, I did not feel comfortable with where it was before the event started. So I made the very last second decision, and I touched on this at the beginning, but very last second decision to play Prism. But I am a hardcore Briar player, and I was not ready to bring that into a post-ban meta right now. Still is a puzzle that needs to be solved, and not there yet. So.
And to your point, like even though Briar, like we've seen iterations of Briar, Briar is still a new hero compared to those tried and trusted heroes like Dorinthia and Bravo and Ira and what have you. So it makes sense that even like this is the first time Briar's been shooken up, and this is the first time Briar needs to be rediscovered after a meta change. So it stands to reason that maybe people aren't as comfortable playing Briar now compared to the other decks that people know what they do and how to play them and how to build them.
Yeah, I can tell you I'm very afraid to correlate my success with a broken banned card. So I need to figure it out as well, so that I can not run into a Belichick Brady discussion if it was the okay. So I am looking forward to either solving that puzzle or getting good with something else.
Yeah, and I think
so. Like I said, I was on Prism last night, and that was
and you were on a
very interesting exploration there.
And like, you were on Herald Prism? Did you see a lot of like was it fairly easy, fairly hard to enact the Herald strategy that you found?
I did. I had the deck that I had I would say more auras than I would have liked if I was building that out. I felt pretty comfortable running Prism. I didn't think I was going to run into a lot of brutes. I think I had a tough go at it with Oldhim, but it was still something I was comfortable exploring, and I did. Kano was my first matchup there, and I felt comfortable with it. I do love the, Prism has the ability to really go off.
Yes,
and I kept some of the lists I've seen don't have Tome in Blitz, and I was like, this is insanity. I'm putting Tome, 2 tomes in, because if it happens, it's just nuts. And if I can get a card in Soul and draw 3 and, maybe do that again, it's lights out, right? Their ceiling is so high with go again 6 attacks or more, coming at you right to the face, that it is one of those, like Prism, a Prism Herald attack turn, getting into tomes, runs the same way as like a really solid Lexi 3 of a kind turn. You get these big momentous turns out of some of these heroes that if you can get it off, and that's what Briar Channel, right? Channel Briar was that, beforehand, where especially in Blitz, trying to set up, Kano is the same way. I think in a different way, but it's almost setting up these OTK-esque environments where you're quickly setting up and trying to get someone down from 20 health as quickly as you can. And some of these heroes can do it very easily in one turn. Some better than others. And I think Ira especially was suffering with Briar, because Ira is really, Ira's a control deck at heart and wants to, there's some aggro variants out there, but it wants to block. It wants to block, keep a blue, keep a red, Kadachi.
Yep.
Hit for 5. So your turn is a 8 damage turn.
Play on that late game value
after that. Yeah, and you can do that. Your 2-card hand is better than theirs at that point.
Yes.
So you can block and do stuff and still come back and keep your tempo, and you're always threatening mask. So you're forcing blocks, even if they're not comfortable doing so, or they're really risking you go just crazy. And sometimes those flying kicks coming on the 4th link, it's tough. Being on the other end of that is just tough. And talking to one of the prominent Ira players, this guy plays only Ira ever, plays it religiously. The only way he doesn't play Ira is if he opens up, if he plays sealed Wrath online, and then he picks up Katsu. That's it.
Right.
But he was really kind of dejected last season because Briar really put Ira in a bad spot. And Ira was still in terms of meta representation, Ira was still one of the top 5-6 heroes to show up in skirmishes and get wins. It was still showing up. But in terms of if there was a Achilles heel last season, it was Briar getting those embodiments and be able to efficiently block out their big attack that they were really putting everything in towards and rendering it, pretty useless. Getting only burning 1 card from hand and still being able to come back with an even greater attack. It really really put Ira in a bad spot against that particular matchup there. So without the threat of that, right, with the errata, you now have Ira mid control back at it. It matches up against most of these guys pretty fairly at this point.
All right.
So no, right? If we're sometimes I think Blitz Chain can high roll in a really great chain player can really make it happen. But a lot of these decks at this point are more mid than aggro, and it develops these this kind of fair trading balanced game even in the Blitz level.
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely, I think that's what we were hoping to see out of the ban and what we hope to see more of. And I do think, it's going to be interesting. We're going to have to wait to see for sure what we get in Everfest and what people, there's always somebody who's got some dark horse figured out that can upset the meta. But I just kind of looking at how things are now from a first glance, I definitely think we have what could be a more balanced meta. I think without the aggro strategies being as oppressive anymore, it opens up room for, like you say, mid-range and control. We're gonna see, I think, a whole slew of decks that can keep each other accountable now. Let's say, for example, Old Him rises up in popularity. Well, now Prism can come and overtake that. And now if Prism kind of peaks up, then maybe Bravo and Reinar come up to keep Prism a little more accountable, and then with the rise of Bravo and Reinar, then we see Dash kind of take over a little bit, and it's, I think we have the room for this kind of rolling, evolving meta now.
Yeah. Do you see? So last week in our level up, we had talked about the archetype triangle.
Yes.
With Briar out, what is the most prominent aggro deck that you see in the meta right now? Do you see a prominent aggro deck in the meta? And B, if you don't, is that a problem?
That's a good question. I mean, my first thought is, Cheerios Briar still viable? And I don't see why not. Maybe because you've still got access to nimblism, and you've still got access to potent cards that can enable Briar's strategy of all gas. And I think that...
I do think...
Sorry, go ahead.
Plunder Run was a massive, massive part of Cheerios Briar. If they can... I think Lightning Briar stands a chance if you can effectively implement Electrify back into it, because I do think that card draw is super important.
I mean, what if it gets replaced with the Belittle Minnowism package?
Belittle Minnowism is a very interesting set of cards. I think it is... it's good. Can you utilize that blue pitch if you're going to go that route? I assume every time I think of Belittle and Minnowism, I'm thinking of getting a blue Minnowism for pitch value and not necessarily the red one for buff effects.
100%.
So, you see that a lot in Katsu as like a blue pitch tutor almost. And I've seen it a lot in Chain lately, but I've seen both versions of Minnowism. But yellow doesn't exist, but red and blue Minnowisms in Chain and Classic Constructed played to great effect. Even Nimblism and Nimble Strike in Chain. Not to get on a tangent there.
Yeah.
But it is definitely. It's good. It's a good set. Can you leverage that into there? What are you taking away from other things? Anytime you put more generics into a hero, you're always got to weigh what you're taking out of that. If you're taking anything productive out of that. One of my problems with where I was with Briar before the start of the night was my ratios were way off after putting the Plunder Runs back in. And taking out the Electrifies, I realized that my Lightning just wasn't there, and I wasn't comfortable running with the amount that I had, knowing that I couldn't effectively fuse my Entwine Lightnings, and I felt like I could potentially have a lot of dead cards in my hand. And then my strategy and the potential for what would have been in the Arsenal slot was kind of screwed up, and if I wasn't going to be fusing Lightning, what could I put in those? And then all of a sudden it just unraveled in front of me.
Right.
So that's so when you're including something like a Belittle and Minnowism, I suppose I'm asking myself, what am I what is going in there that what am I taking out of that when I do that? I don't want to put too many generics into some of these decks. I do think it starts to muddy the waters
for sure
a bit, but not to discount it. Belittle Minnowism is a very good set of cards,
and I'm just spitballing at this point as well.
That I'm I've seen it. I've always taken it out of my Katsu builds. I've seen some very successful players put it in and swear by it, and sometimes it's something that it escapes me a little bit. Effective use of Belittle, realizing that I've missed on Belittle, if that makes sense. I've been in a situation more often than I would have liked to not be able to reveal the correct card, so it's just a 3 for one and go again without the added benefit, and weighing deck construction on against something like that is definitely something you got to think about as well, so you're not missing the benefit more often than you're not, which can be said about a lot of cards, but that's
and I mean, that's
what I think about
a good topic for another time too, is just like on that deliberate card inclusion and just including cards that are just like really driven for whatever game plan or strategy you're going towards. But for sure, you ask a good question there with aggro, and I think a question that comes to mind based like in response to your question about a prominent aggro strategy is at the core of it, do we consider chain to be aggro or mid-range?
This current iteration of chain, I would consider a mid-range. But I suppose that's more the speed than anything else. I guess it can be. I would say it skews towards aggro now that we're putting the words out there. But it definitely feels slower and taller. I will say that. So I suppose depending on how your definition of aggro is, and it is affected by Plunder Run as well, but not as much. I think it can definitely recover, and it has the cards to help bring it over the top a bit. But in terms of it usually does. Oh, let me backtrack here. Yeah, I would consider it in aggro skewed mid range, but I guess really. Well, now you're really making me think about it. I guess it is kind of an aggro, huh? Yeah.
It is and it isn't at the same time, because it
doesn't feel. I think what's holding me back there is it doesn't feel like an aggro deck because it is hitting so tall, and usually I'm associating that with a more mid-range like single tall attack, but really it's hitting for, depending on what you banish, right? It's hitting for like 7, and then you're shackling and giving Rosetta Thorn go again, and then you're hitting for another thing. And so it still feels slower because it does take some time, but I guess that's really just, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not aggro. It still wants to empty its hands. I mean, Chain's comfortable blocking. It's got I think it's just mostly in the equipment with the Carrion Husk, but it's still not afraid to put some cards down, and it can block out some turns, which I really think makes it that middle of the road. It doesn't have as much difficulty with 2-block non-attacks in attacks as it used to, but it's still not afraid to block out because especially depending on what shackle they're on, they're not losing as much as the next guy on there, and that ridiculous card advantage with Chain is always a ticking time bomb.
And I think to your point, the fact that Chain aims to kind of block at certain points and stretch the game out a bit longer to allow it to make it to those late shackles, that within itself defines it as mid-range, I think, in our game. I think like true aggro is right out the gate swinging, no hold back. I think that's kind of a little more the definition of aggro within Flesh and Blood. So I think based off defining Chain as mid-range, I don't know if we have a true premier aggro deck anymore. I guess Mech Boost has the potential to output
Boost Mech,
huge amount. It's very easy to fatigue, but it can put out huge amounts of damage. So
I think it's interesting to see because especially when you bring up Dash, you're really talking about flexible decks that can get aggressive with sideboard decisions, right? So most of these decks here, even like Prism and Classic Constructed, Dash, Chain, all have the ability to speed up or slow down depending on their sideboard. But in terms of, so I think what's not there is like Agrukatsu. And I've been trying to work on Agrukatsu for a little bit, and I thought I was there, and I got some people on board too, and I think it started to break down a little bit, but losing that was with Plunder Run, and losing Plunder Run. Agrukatsu is still, I think, a thing, but it's just not. It doesn't have that big attack that it needed to with a Plunder Run into Surging Strike for that 8 attack draw. powerful hit, and that has like completely fallen off the cliff now, and it's difficult to see right now where it could pick up, and that's where I think Everfest should come into play, is producing something for these decks here to give a more viable aggro strategy. Though,
what if
I've heard very good things about Raiden Bolton, and I consider that an aggro deck because you really need
that's a good point
all
as
your
well.
cards, and you really can't afford to block with cards in hand, and it is it's pretty well positioned in this kind of purgatory meta right now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I might be influenced because I just saw Jimmy Lee on YouTube.
and Jimmy's a notorious warrior player though as well.
Oh yeah, he's second to none with that Raiden build. It's crazy.
Yeah,
but even he went hybrid for most of I think he went to one of the Vegas Calling. He was playing hybrid Bolton there. I was really personally rooting for just pure Raiden.
Fair.
But yeah, so like if Raiden, if I keep calling it Raiden, but it's Bolton Raiden. If it can take advantage of that, that's definitely, I think, a pretty solid aggro there. I wish Dorinthia would show up a little more. I feel like Prism holds Dorinthia back. I hear that's like a terrible
so
in Classic, and
Dorinthia,
the more Prism comes up,
Dorinthia kind of struggles to the fact that like her reprise is shut off by Prism. Prism can say no blocks, no damage hits, and Dorinthia's literally got nothing.
Take my shields and move on with your life.
So that's why Dorinthia struggles in a Prism heavy meta, and just Dorinthia doesn't have the tools she needs to pop heralds. So.
It's interesting to really digest these things, because it's like I don't necessarily have a problem with a mid-range heavy meta with some control elements and the ability to sideboard into an aggressive plan. But I personally, that's just like my Christmas Wonderland right there, is just balanced, mid value everything, value block, value attack. That's exactly where I want to be in my gameplay. But I had a lot of fun with Briar. Was too good, right? I do think something needs to step up and be not Briar, but a benchmark aggro deck should be found here, and if not right now, when Everfest comes out.
Now, Kano is another one that he has the potential to be a really big aggro powerhouse if the meta goes unchecked and allows him to do his thing. And his is like, I mean, I think aggro is important to keep the meta accountable. My gut feeling tells me that this is going to be the rise of either mid-range or control at this point. I've had that gut feeling before. I thought that going into Everfest, or not going into Tails, and that wasn't the case. But now with Plunder Run being nerfed, my gut feeling is that it's going to open up enough wiggle room for the meta to balance out, and for slower strategies and more reactive strategies to start to come forward. But yeah, I think from an aggro standpoint, like Kano's another one that will force the meta to remain accountable. And like if you don't, especially now that Plunder Run's out, if you don't run Null Rune, Kano can roast you. And so it's going to be, and if you do run Null Rune, then Kano really doesn't have a leg to stand up on, barring that we get something a really useful tool for Kano in Everfest. Yeah, I mean, I really want to sleeve up my my Prism kind of react and pitch stack and lock you out of the game that way, or a strategy. I think that one's a fun one to revisit. I want to revisit. I mean, I do want to explore with some. I feel inclined to explore with Bravo now. I've never felt inclined to explore with Bravo before. I don't know why Bravo just never appealed to me up until this point, but I think Bravo's definitely got room to. He always was good in the meta, but he's really got room to flourish now in the constructed meta.
Bravo's always been one of those ones. If they're not, if Bravo's not A, it's at least B.
Yeah,
it never drops too low. But the OG heroes always seem to hang around. A little bit. Rhinar doesn't get enough respect either, but I think Rhinar is like your quintessential like mid-range hero.
Yeah,
it wants to, and Levia is an offshoot of that, but that's it wants to block a few, and then swing for a little, leak damage through 6 at a time here. Pinging you a couple times each, and still maybe once or twice. Getting go again or hitting super tall, getting the big intimidate turn, but you're really driving towards you're using all those attacks and then coming in with trying to target like a reckless swing for the kill more often than not.
Yeah.
But Rhinar is one of those guys that I don't think sees enough play, and this is right now. I feel like this is like. When a meta resets, Rhinar always tends to show up.
Yeah.
In some form, because its matchups are never like everything's 50%. The matchup wise with Rhinar, so your odds of winning are just as good as anything else. So why not Rhinar?
Well, and I think Rhinar's
and an excellent Rhinar player is out of this world. They can really mess you up.
And I think Rhinor's kind of like a Brute in general is a bit of a check and balance for the meta, and B is a litmus test for the meta. So we see Rhinar come out of the Savage Lands, come explore a bit and see if it's his time, and if Brute really starts to pull forward, then we're going to see more Brutes start to pop up, and if and like I think if we see Prism kind of come to the rise, then I think we'll see more Brutes come and follow suit. And if we don't see Prism, then we won't see the Brutes. Furthermore, and then and that's where I think our meta truly is going to be a balanced meta, where like right now, mind you, I'm no savant, but I don't see any one strategy currently poised to overtake the meta.
Yeah, me neither. I think there's a lot of different. I mean, we've had a lot of talk. We've talked about Bravo. We've talked about Chain and Classic. Yeah, Viserai is probably one of the top deck consensus wise right now. It doesn't seem like anyone can keep Viserai in check.
Well, once again though, if Viserai goes OTK, Prism has a great matchup into OTK Viserai, and if Viserai goes aggro, then Kano has a great matchup into Viserai. So even Viserai, I think there are decks there to keep him accountable.
Yeah, I think so too. It is to that point. It is incredibly balanced right now. It is a very interesting place to be, and I really enjoy it. For being honest, I think it's great. The balance in this game is one of the selling points more than anything else. Yeah. The ability to pick up almost any hero and know that if you build it correctly and play it right, is a viable hero.
Yes.
And that's very very interesting. And I still think I don't think Briar's done.
No, me neither.
Not by a long shot. I think it just needs to take. I think time will heal those wounds, and a viable, highly competitive Briar deck will come out of it. Will it be S tier? Maybe not, but I don't think we're looking for S tier decks.
Well, and I think with Plunder Run getting banned, the bar for S tier got lowered.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, you need to. You're relying more on your own class cards and like your resources to create your tempo advantages.
Yes.
You're no longer have this crutch of +3 draw card that was supporting, and it was supporting Cheerios Briar, and it was supporting Agrikatsu, and to a lesser extent, Chain, but it was you I would say that my blinders were on, and then it left, and it was like, wow, it was really broken. I had to change a lot of my decks out to clear out the plunder.
We were so deep in the fog that we couldn't even see how.
Yeah.
That's funny.
There's something to be said for that, and that's why I appreciate LSS for doing it. Like I had mentioned this last week, but in terms of how I feel about like the game after the bans, I'm pretty unfazed. This game is, not to get on my soapbox, this game is great, and the fact that we're having this discussion right now about like which hero is top and not being able to really determine that is a super healthy sign. I do think in terms of archetypical diversity, there needs to be some balance changes, and I think that comes with the time of brewing. I think one of those Flesh and Blood isn't an online based game, right? So you're not seeing the meta being solved at instant speed like you are in other TCGs right now, and I think it's to their advantage, and it helps the player base on a competitive level to have that kind of grassroots, secretive brewing, rogue brew coming out of nowhere. Like Cheerios Briar was that. It got leaked, but that was, someone discovered that. Tariq Patel, discovered that and kept it a secret for a month before it showed up at UK Nets.
Yep. Well, there were,
and the Cincinnati ProQuest had that Lightning variant as well, but even that guy, I think, just heard about it. So like the leaks were already happening. That UK Nets was supposed to be like the debut of that deck, but they had kept it under wraps for some time.
Yeah.
There, and it's just fun to know that like that's happening out there, right? There are people putting in the time. We're part of a playtest group. It's going to putting in the time and seeing what's out there and what's working. And there are elements to those groups where you get the brewers out there to try and figure out concepts that people aren't thinking about, and you get those people to fine tune that, and you end up with a creative deck that is unexpected, and you can ride that right into ProQuest season.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's it reminds me of the glory days of some other TCGs.
Well, I think we're building up to our own glory days, and
yeah, right. Kind of reaching the golden age.
We're establishing the golden age, and I couldn't be more excited to be a part of it. Anything else on the new meta?
I do think I think it's important to so some people kind of take this time off, but I may have broached this a little bit before, but this is a great time to kind of set your expectations, right? What decks are you good with? What decks have you not used and want to explore to see if they fit? This moment between the 17th and the 4th is a great time to hone your skills, establish what decks are your strong suit right now, and so when you are inundated starting next week with a deluge of previews, you can start to see where those cards may or may not fit into the decks that you are comfortable playing with. No set that's come out yet has completely turned things. As far I'm a young player, I don't know yet. But like there are people who've been playing Bravo, Reinhardt, Katsu, etc. since they came out. No set has come out and really completely taken people completely out. Maybe Briar a little bit when it came in, but
Chain as well.
You're gonna have your
Chain as well, I'd say.
Yeah, Chain's a very good one. But there's still a lot of people out there that were running like their favorite decks.
That's fair.
And to be able to establish a baseline right now. So, maybe let me take a step back. Using this time now is a great time to establish your baseline going in. And you'll need that if you're looking to be productive with your time once Everfest comes in. There might be something in there that makes you completely discard everything that you've ever done, but your starting point is going to be with what you're comfortable with.
Yes.
And that's what happens when a meta resets, right? You're either exploring what you're comfortable with and honing your skills and strengthening your strengths, or you're exploring trying to break what those comfortable things are for some people. But by the time Everfest comes down, it's healthy to have done some additional research, played some games that you're not used to playing, and getting better at the game and establishing that baseline so that when Everfest does come out, you can where the cards are going to go, or at least a feeling about what you'll do with them.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think even to like further add on that, this isn't just particular to figuring out this meta, but just in general, the people who really want to succeed and do big things with this game, this is your time to gain a leg up and improve your game while other people are taking their time off. Work on your pivot turns, work on your pitch stacking, work on your fundamentals. And when other people come out of hibernation and start testing again, you've already got all that time and experience that other people may not have. And that can also help set you apart and give you a leg up moving forward. I think that brings us into
Level Up.
This week on the Level Up moment, we are going to be talking about a pretty big fundamental, the art of equipment blocking. And right off the bat, I don't know, Pat, did you have anything you wanted to highlight with equipment blocks?
Absolutely. Turn 0, full block with all your armor. And then you don't have to worry about blocking with it for the rest of the game.
Just get it out of the way early with.
Just get it out of the way. So blocking with armor is a very it's a crucial part of the game. Blocking in general it can be a concept, while simple simple approach to think about. Right, you want to prevent damage from coming through, so you're going to block. Using armor is super important. Blocking as a concept in the game is one of those ones that it's a simple concept at first, but using it effectively is what levels you up. It takes you to the next phase of the game where you can become more successful. You see a lot of beginners afraid of taking any damage, and so they'll do anything that they can to prevent that damage. One of the important concepts of the game is the difference between an on-hit effect and vanilla damage. Vanilla damage very rarely is a reason to block, even if it seems kind of high, right? So if I'm facing Bravo and they're coming in with Crippling Crush, right? 11 damage, discard 2 cards at random if it hits. If you're at 40 life and you're going to take 11. It's a big hit, and it's like a quarter of right? Quarter your life. It's a lot, right? You're gonna go down to 29. You're gonna lose 2 cards. It stinks. But Crippling Crush at the beginning of the game, dominated, is going to hurt you a lot less than that Crippling Crush dominated is going to hit you when you're at 2.
Yep.
And one of the difference makers on those two scenarios is where your armor is going to be available when that happens. So blocking is something that is best used as a more surgically than kind of just blanket, right? Unless you're playing this, completely fatigued, block out everything regardless. There's still still a method to a madness when that happens, but the crux of it is that the later that you are able to hold on to your armor, the more prepared you are for that end game. Blocking with your armor is going to be one of the more important things that you do because it enables you to do a few different things. One of those is enabling your pivot.
Yes.
Turn. If you can use your armor late to block a powerful attack, you're preserving cards from hand, and you're better able to transition to your pivot turn when you do that. If you're able to have 6+, 6-7 block on your armor, you have skull cap, chest piece that blocks 2, so fist, arms that block 2, and the skull cap's on. You can block 6 late. Very rarely are you gonna, have all 6 available, at the very last moment of the game. But, being able to preserve life and cards at the important moment, especially when those cards are the ones that you want to use to help swing the game into your favor, that's when you want to use that armor. Blocking out with armor, and using Bravo as an example, if I'm blocking out with my armor, I've got a handful of cards, and now I can activate Bravo, give my crush card, dominate. I have a pummel, an arsenal. I have everything set up, and I didn't have to burn 2 blues blocking out so that I can't do that. Anyways, I've used my armor, and then I can turn around and I can now attack late with a Crippling Crush that's dominated with a pummel because I was able to preserve cards in hand. Alternatively, you can stop somebody else's pivot doing the same thing, right? If they're setting up that late game, we talked about Plunder Run a lot. So in the before times, they would try to set up a late Plunder Run where hopefully they burned your armor. But if you were able to keep your armor in place, they would Akatsu would play a Plunder Run into a Surging Strike, attack for 8. If it 8, go again. If it hits, draw a card. There's a lot of different things that can happen in that. But if you're able to block out that attack, they're really a Ish Creek without a paddle, unless they had the Christmas Land draw of Gust Wave into Magenshi Release right there. But those aspects, being able to prevent somebody else's pivot turn, is almost as good as getting your own pivot turn, and can really shut down their game plan and start to turn the game in your favor.
Yeah, totally. I think pivot turns are one of the biggest times we are using our equipment to block. And I do want to heavily emphasize that not just blocking vanilla damage because you're afraid to take damage. This is one that I see constantly people do. They go, it's 11 or it's 12 or whatever, and I'm scared to take that much damage. If I'm not being put into an area where I'm then being put into a life total where now I can't prevent myself from losing the game. Let's say, for example, going to 1 against Warrior and then coming in with a weapon attack, and now they Steel Blade shunt you, and it's 1 unblockable damage. Or going to whatever life total against somebody who presents Arcane, and they present more Arcane damage than you can outlive, or even going to 2 against a Brute and then they can reckless swing you to death. like that's short of blocking to keep myself out of those life thresholds. Yeah, that's the other time I'm either gonna use my equipment to enable a pivot turn, or I'm going to use it to prevent a very critical on hit trigger, which is probably preventing an opponent's pivot turn, likely.
And no equipment, or so no opponent is going to win the game turn 0 or turn 1 for that matter, right? Classic Constructed, it is a long, dragged out game. Even the quick ones can be take some time and take several turns.
Yep.
So no one attacking, if they hit everything that they ever wanted to hit on turn 1, you're not going to lose the game on that turn. You have to be really comfortable with your deck, and there is that fear. I know that fear. I feel that fear sometimes, where you just want to. You just want to block it. You don't want them to draw that one more card. You don't want them to have that one more on hit. But the reality is that no matter what they do in the first couple turns, there's very little they can do that will seal the game at that moment. Which means you can usually take the hit. You can take the hit. Right? These are your options. You can take the hit and have the effect. You'll lose your life, and you'll potentially enable some sort of on hit where you might have to discard a card or give them a card, and they may be able to continue on their turn. But it won't win them the game. Alternatively, you can block with the cards in hand. You have not lost your game if you don't hold on to the cards that you have in your hand early. And that's what they're there for. That is one of the 3 things that these cards do, right? They pitch for a resource, they attack, and they defend. So when you defend with these cards, especially early, you're performing a function of those cards. And being able to recognize that your armor is there for very special occasions and that all other blocking should be through your hand, recognizing that your hand, wow, if you were able to preserve all 4 cards in your arsenal, would create a splendid turn. You're very rarely going to have that opportunity in the game. And it is okay to put 2 cards or 3 cards down and have 1 left and do something less spectacular and splashy than you would have otherwise, because you've preserved you've preserved some of your life, and you've extended that game further, and you've stopped them from doing something splashy and sexy in their own right.
Yeah.
And being able to do that work through the game into that pivotal moment where now you have the opportunity to use less than the cards. You can block with a card and several pieces of equipment that preserve your life and cards in hand, and now you have your pivot turn. Now you can do that splashy fun thing at the right time, and that's how games get won.
Yep. And that's such a huge just part of Flesh and Blood in general, is that like making the right decision at the right time is usually the difference maker between winning or losing.
Yeah. And you can usually track if you lose a game, or if you win or lose a game, you can usually pinpoint that decision point in the game. And it's very rarely the last moment in the game.
Yeah, it's
right. It is somewhere in the early to mid game where someone made that suboptimal play. They blocked with that armor. They took that hit to keep a card in hand that ended up not doing everything that they wanted it to do. And it probably should have been a block 3 instead of, whatever else it was. And then when that battle war encounter doesn't rear its ugly head again until you're at 3 life. and they attack dominated for 5, and you can't do it. You can't stop it.
Yeah. Now, the thought about like when to use a lot of different equipment is definitely different depending on the piece of equipment, depending on whether it has temper versus battle worn versus blade break, and depending on your life total, your opponent's like, there's so many decisions, and it's impossible for us to dip into all of them. But there's 2 key pieces of equipment, probably the 2 that see the most play out of any equipment that I do want to touch on, and those are skullcap and tunic. Skullcap's a very interesting one because skullcap has that variable block bonus depending on whether you're at a lower life total than your opponent, and skullcap does put you in positions where it's actually correct to block vanilla damage or make blocks that you wouldn't normally make with other pieces of equipment at that time. And the reason being is because of the fact that skullcap is only at its best when you're at a lower life total than your opponent. And if you ever do find you're in that situation where you're possibly going to pivot and you're maybe no longer anticipating that you will be at a lower life total than your opponent for the rest of the game, you might be in a position where you want to use your skullcap sooner than later. I caution that you make sure it's still like either an efficient block or that it, try to look for that convenient on-hit trigger or something that that you can mitigate and get the most value out of it. But skullcap is one where it's you sometimes do want to block with it sooner rather than later.
Right. You still want to get that value.
Exactly.
You still want to if you want to get that 3 block value out of it, so you'll get that sometimes suboptimal block a little early if you know that it's the only time you'll get the full block value from it. It does feel bad to block 2 total with it for the game if you get there.
Yeah, exactly. And then tunic is the other one that presents really interesting play points because tunic being blade break, right away I think a lot of people default to, well, why do I ever want to block with tunic if I can get another resource out of it? And an important question to always ask yourself is, will this game go another 3 turn cycles? Because if the answer is no, that makes your decision to utilize tunic a lot easier. That doesn't necessarily mean that blocking with tunic is correct in that moment, because the next question I'm always asking myself with tunic is, do I need to block with tunic? Because sometimes even though you maybe want to hold on to all the cards in your hand, maybe your hand only needs 3 cards, and then within that it's like, okay, well, I can comfortably give up a card, and now maybe I don't need to use a piece of equipment to block. So that is those are kind of a few really key questions I always ask myself when I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to block with equipment. And I've more and more so have been trying to experiment with just blocking later and later with my equipment. And this isn't a perfect heuristic. There are times where it is correct to block earlier than later. But I've found for the most part, the later I can keep my equipment around, the happier I am. Like, you might think in a moment you're in a jam where it's like, oh, this is the perfect time to block with my equipment. But then you'll find a couple turns down the road, you'll be in that next moment where it's like, oh, this would have even been a better time to have my equipment. Now, you if you make it through an entire game, and especially if you lose and you haven't used your equipment, you waited too long to block with your equipment. But
there's definitely a balance.
Yeah, there is. But the rule of thumb is, the later you can keep your equipment up, the better it will benefit you.
Especially with skullcap and tunic in particular, can be kind of, I don't want to call them trap cards, but they're not always the be all end all in their slots.
Yes.
Granted, they are best in slot for a lot of things, a lot of times. but especially if you are, if your game plan is built around the idea of not lasting 6 turns, is Tunic the right equipment for you? If you're using it for the resource more than the block, there are other things out there like Heart and Crosstrap, or Aether Iron Weave.
Oh, Aether Iron Weave is an amazing
that.
card. The fact that it's Battle Worn instead of Blade Rake, I think people are sleeping on that card.
Yeah, and it's if you do what Rune Blades do, it's 2 resources on demand. Like it's there.
A command and conquer at the end of your turn, or
it certainly is.
Or there's it's so valuable in that late game. And the fact, that just that one in particular, the fact that you can block early with it and then still keep it around, versus like Tunic where once you block with it, it's gone.
Yeah, right. You're gone. It's gone after that. So you're waiting, or you're playing Tunic because you want that resource and you want the opportunity to block. It's a fine line between holding on to it to use that resource, and then blocking with it. I find, and this gets into more tangents, but especially when it comes to like Aether Iron Weave, how many resources am I realistically going to use, and will some of those be wasted if I do the conversion math, right? If I use Briar as an example, right? A Tunic resource equals 4 damage. Aether Iron Weave, while using 2 resources, how realistic am I to use that second resource more often than not? If my deck's built around utilizing effectively those 2 resources, I feel great about it. I do feel kind of irksome when I am using an Iron Weave or a Heart and Crosstrap and using one of those resources, or resource discount and Crosstrap turns. In which case, I'll still use a Tunic if that's the case. But being able to make that kind of assessment, I think that is like another level up moment. But understanding chess pieces, resources, and how they fit well into your deck is definitely something to think about. On top of when to break your Tunic to save your life. And Skullcap is great for block 3. But there's so many good headpieces out there that have a sweet utility. Like Hope Merchant's Hood is so good. It's so good. It doesn't block, and everyone will ignore it. But being able to mulligan your hand and find and draw into what you need at instant speed, that's a powerful ability. And especially in decks that require you to have a specific card type in your hand at the right time, the ability to reroll is fantastic. And if you're already built around either not blocking or blocking a lot from hand so that you're not using your armor as much for that kind of thing, there's definitely stuff out there. Halo Illumination for Prism, Ebonfold, all those things. Those are great headpieces. And not everyone's going to have the power to. People, especially with Skullcap, sometimes overestimate their ability to pay the arcane barrier when it comes up. You have to pay 3 to get arcane barrier 3 in your Skullcap, and if you're running a bunch of reds, you might not be getting there when it matters. So just some things to think about with armor as well.
Yeah, it's whether that last point of life total can make the difference between you eking out the victory or not.
At the end of the day, block late.
Yeah,
because it matters.
That's the best heuristic I think we can instill out of any. If that's the best thing we can give you out of this is don't block unnecessary vanilla damage, and just wait for that late pivot or that late block that you need, and you'll be happy you have your equipment.
Absolutely.
Then.
Yep.
Well, this was a long one, a lot to talk about. I think do you have anything else there, Pat, before we look at wrapping up here?
I don't know if I could possibly add to this. This covered a lot of bases.
Yeah, before we wrap here, our usual plugs. We are on all streaming platforms, on Apple's podcast, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts. You can Google search the Combat Chain podcast, and you'll find us, or just search the Combat Chain podcast on any streaming platform. We are also on YouTube. YouTube, we're I think currently at 36 subscribers, and that's where we're really trying to push the following right now. In addition to that, we are, to help push that following, we are doing a YouTube subscriber contest. When we hit 100 subscribers, we will be raffling off a cold foil data doll and some Gamegenic deck boxes. So
Great.
Go check that out. Hit the like and subscribe button. You can also find us on Twitter. Pat, what's your Twitter?
You can find me at my Twitter handle is at PatSmashGood. You can find the Combat Chain Twitter at the handle at thecombatchain. And we can find Adam at FOMToolery TCG.
Yeah, that's correct. I am. Pat's definitely the more active one of us too, but I am working on stepping it up and being a little more present in the social media realm. Lastly, we do have our Patreon that we are trying to get going. At this point, we're just trying to cover some hosting fees. So if you can, anything you can do to help out there, we're not asking much. We're not really, if you can't do anything at all, that's fine too. We're just happy that you guys are listening, but anything is much appreciated. And funnily enough, right now, our Patreon, you can't even search the Combat Chain on Patreon to find us for some reason. But I will link everything on the YouTube video. So if you're trying to find anything, any way to interact with us, we are available there. And I think that's all we've got for this week. Until next week, we're closing the Combat Chain. We'll get there. Thanks for listening, guys.
We appreciate you.
Until next week, we're closing.
Oh God! All right.
We'll try it one more time.
All right, here we go. One more time.